Hello, Dean Herridge, and I guess a good morning to you. Thank you for taking the time out to have a chat to us on the ARC Service Park. I guess you're on the different side of the microphone this morning. How's life treating you in isolation?
Well, I do come from the most isolated capital city in the world, so I guess there's going to be some benefit. We're sort of slightly used to it here in WA, but not too bad. I mean, we've still been able to actively be able to sort of function at work. We don't have too much, obviously, exposure to the public or vice versa. So from that point of view, it hasn't been too bad. It's probably been a little more difficult for the family, but obviously difficult times for everybody, to be fair, and interesting and new times for us all.
From a business point of view, how has Maximum Motorsport been dealing with, I guess, the social distancing, and have you seen a drop in business, or you've been managing to get through?
I think definitely some parts of our business. I mean, we do pretty much everything Subaru, from rally cars through to servicing and performance upgrades, etc., and particularly more recently moved into motorsport parts and things. So some aspects have absolutely slowed down. It's impacted our industry like everybody else's, but we've always got something to do here. I guess that's the great thing of having extra tentacles and businesses. We're also the Australian distributors of Kilda Tools from the UK and Seaborn Carbon from America, so those things are still trickling through.
And I see there you not long ago moved into a new premises. Looks all very new and shiny. Are you fully set up now, or still moving in and unpacking those hidden boxes?
No, we didn't do too bad actually. In the crossover, we put my old man to work. Obviously, Dad and myself worked together as a family business essentially, so his skill set came to the fore. He did a lot of the setup of this new workshop in the transition, so in actual fact he probably spent 90% of his time here setting up. So when we could come in, we treat it like building a rally car. If you don't do some things now, you'll never go back and do them again. So, Dad's done some amazing stuff. He's way more talented than me, particularly at doing things like, mezzanines and floors and benches and stuff like that. So, I actually joked to him at one stage and said, geez, Dad, you should have been an engineer. And he joked to me and said, I'm a pretend-gineer. So we got very good value out of the old man in the setup of this place. And, it's been a fantastic move. It's closer for most of us, including the staff, from our houses and stuff. So, we're really enjoying it, and nearly been operational from here for nearly 12 months. So it's time's flying.
And I guess you mentioned your dad there. You obviously have grown up around the sport of rallying, I guess, and motorsport in general, from a professional driving career to running the family business to, I guess, normally being on this side of the questions. Do you ever get sick of it, or it's in your blood and you can't get rid of it?
I'm sure there's this odd occasion when, yes, that's the case after a rough day or very early get-ups and late nights and stuff. But no, I to be honest, I don't know what I'd do without it. I mean, I'm just intensely passionate about the sport. And like you said, it comes from being around it growing up. I mean, even now, my kids who are getting a little bit older, have a real interest in it and love coming on even state events. We all still at Maximum Motorsport run, state customers and clients at, state level. So we're still involved in those events. Right up to national and international stuff, obviously. So, no, we do live and breathe it, but I also hope that gives us a bit of an edge in regards to what we do in business and some of our contacts and support. And, even moving forward, in the next week, we're due to launch, an outlet store for Subaru genuine parts, for instance. So we've been working away with that. So some of those would never have come about without sort of, I guess, rallying and the sport and things like that. So, I love it. And I think even the new roles of me being involved, driving a microphone, I sort of joke, more so than driving. In some ways, I've liked that challenge as well. And hopefully, the people who listen and the people in the sport feel that I bring something different, or the fact that I have driven, makes the questions more relevant, or I hopefully can get some insights that maybe other people maybe can't do. So, one of those things for me that springs to mind, and who would have thought that, a Facebook Live opportunity, to me, I really love it being at the end of stages, because to me there's no more raw occasion to speak to a driver than at the end of the stage. They've just finished, they've had no contact with anyone else, they don't know how the other drivers have gone, they've only got their sort of space to know how they dealt with it, and then they're dealing with the times, how the car's been, their overall position in the rally. There's no political parts to it, there's no time to maybe assess a great question to why you did or didn't win the stage and stuff. So to be there and hopefully probe in a nice way and bring that to the people is what I really love. And Facebook Live, to me, there's no more live. You can't get any more information. Nowadays, we all want information on tap, and you can get on Facebook and YouTubes and stuff and know just about as much as anyone else on the rally. Here, this is our ability to go, no one else in the world is getting this information before us. And I sort of like that live aspect at the time. So it's been a fun part of it as well, and seeing other people's career and journeys go along as well.
No, there's no question. You certainly are good at it. And I think if my efforts for this little segment's anything to go by, your job is well and truly safe.
No, you're doing fine, mate. You're doing fine.
Look, you obviously your name is almost synonymous with the Subaru brand here in Australia. I think for as long as most people can remember, you've driven and lived and breathed Subaru, from driving for the factory team to being a part seller now. But didn't really start with Subaru, did it? There was a small stint there with Hyundai for a couple of years. You care to take us through that?
I mean, I don't have any talent and don't confess to be a mechanic at all. So I was never likely to be one of those people who, worked day and night and knew what I was doing behind the spanners. Although I was made, as you should be done, to work on the car, much to, I didn't enjoy that part, but I knew it was an essential part to get people around you to support your motorsport. And, on my very early forays where I left school, did my TEE, I raised some money working at CBH grain bins, and I went straight into, would you believe, a left-hand drive Hyundai Elantra that Hyundai WA were left with after an advertising campaign over here. So the Koreans had sent the Hyundais over, of course, left-hand drive, did a stint in the middle of the bush to do their TV ads, and of course went, well, there's no point in sending them back to Korea. You guys can keep them in Australia. So, a very smart guy at Hyundai WA called Colin Norton thought, well, we should turn these into rally cars. So sure enough, Dad at the time had done the deal with, got a pretty cheap, brand new left-hand drive Hyundai Elantra. We put, savings and money into building that car for me to have a go at it. I'd done a little bit of autocross and hacking around the back paddock in Toyota Corollas and stuff like that. But really at 17, had a chance to enter some clubman and state. And because we had Rally Australia over here, I even was sort of at one point one of the youngest competitors to drive in an international or a world rally championship, which seems pretty crazy to chuck you in the deep end and maybe spend that money. But in some ways, I look back at that, and to finish a 4-day at the time WRC event doing something like 400 or 500 kilometres was probably a year's worth of motorsport into one that really helped me sort of, leap ahead in regards to driving. And fortunately was okay at it. That connection continued on with Hyundai into a Hyundai Coupe. Did a small stint with Kia, would you believe, before Kia were even in Australia. I drove in Indonesia, New Zealand and Rally Australia in a Group N style Kia Sophia. It was like a Kia Mentor. And then after that year, didn't really know what we were going to do. We were lining up maybe an Subaru RA at the time, 1996 we're talking. And Colin Norton from Hyundai WA said, hey, we've got this new Hyundai Coupe coming out and think that maybe we should form together to join what was called Team Herridge Hyundai back in the day. And, of course, it was that red Hyundai Coupe with the big H and the flicks through it. And that was my first foray into doing steady rounds of the ARC apart from your own local round. The great thing about that series was at the time, the heroes were, of course, Possum and Neil running in their WRC cars. You had then Group N, particularly Ed Ordinsky and the likes of probably Michael Guest and Cody coming through, and there's a side story to that we'll leave for another day. And then this F2 championship sort of created out of nothing in a way, where we had 5 manufacturers at one point and 6 odd drivers, and we're talking the likes of Simon Evans in the Corolla, Lee Peterson and Nissan Sunny, Ross McKenzie and Rick Bates in Daihatsus, and of course Brett Middleton in Honda. So we had this fantastic little F2 battle for a couple of seasons. And once again, as I'm learning the rounds and cutting my teeth, it was actually a real benefit for me to be competing against these guys in a really competitive sort of series or category, as tier 3, you might even argue, of the ARC. So no, I have lots of fond memories of those fights and battles. And that's when Glenn McNeil and I first got together. Although we sort of grew up half together with our dads competing in state championship, Glenn's very first rally competing with me as a co-driver was actually Coffs Harbour in 1998, I think it was. So, and that obviously set a little bit of a tone for where we went with Subaru from there. So, I was around the Hyundai brand when I guess it was less popular, you might say, and less known than it is now. Obviously, it's now a big giant in the automotive industry and, doing some fantastic things and a great brand to follow even in the WRC. So, that seems a while back now, though. Maybe
best not to count how long. You obviously then, transitioned to Subaru and are still with them today in lots of a variety of capacities. How did that come about? Was it purely off the back of obviously your dad's relationship?
I think that helped. Would you believe at the end of 98, with this F2 series I was talking about, we're obviously had Rally Australia come along. We had a bit of exposure to some international teams. As a young guy, I was making sure that my CV, and you'd try and reach out in those days to try and meet up with some of the team managers and get your name in front of them. And I ended up actually doing a stint the following year in the UK. A little bit of support from Hyundai UK, but the main thrust was, at the time, Dad knew Derek Ringer quite well from his days at Subaru, and Derek Ringer sort of leaned across to do some stuff with the Ford World Rally Team. And he said, as a young guy, yeah, Dean's looks like he's got some talent, but you've really got to get to Europe to have a crack. I mean, you know that yourself. So we actually formed up a little bit of a partnership with him. He was co-driving at the time with Martin Rowe for Renault in the UK Championship, and we actually set across to try and do some rounds in front of them in the UK. Took our Hyundai over there. We looked at leasing cars and all sorts of options, and the most cost-efficient, would you believe, was to pack our Hyundai up, put it in a container, and head to the UK. We did the Pirelli International and the Vauxhall Rally Wales, and competed in those. Had pretty ordinary results, to be honest. Lots of little mechanical issues, which I won't bore you with. But what it did do is I got the chance to test with Renault at the time, and I actually did would you believe, a private kart test. I took Tapio Laupinen's car, kart, and Martin Rowe was there, and they basically put us through our paces in a kart test. And part of that information then went to Renault to see if you're on the shortlist. And I made the shortlist to go back to the UK to test for them in later that year. And probably 2 months later, I was sort of due to fly back after Rally Oz, and Renault announced that they were pulling out of World Touring Cars and British Touring Cars and all motorsport. And I was left high and dry to go, shivers, there's not even a test drive opportunity there. So in 99, we really came back to go, what can we do in even the Australian Rally Championship? 99, sort of 2000, I did a couple of rounds in Dad's Legacy. Long story short, the end of 99 at Rally Australia, I had my very first drive in a Group N car, basically borrowing John Farrell's championship-winning state car. Got a couple of sponsors together and got the attention of STI at the time, because it was my first drive in a Group N car, which they couldn't believe. Most of my driving had been in front-wheel drive cars, apart from Dad's Legacy. And I won a stage, I think, in Group N at the time. The overall result, I think, was okay, maybe fifth in Group N. And we struck up a relationship with STI at the time, and ended up them helping and supporting us to buy current model engine, gearbox. We put that into that same car. And in 2000, some people may remember this bright yellow car competing in the National Series as a privateer, I guess you could say, with a little bit of support from some of the local Subaru dealers and Maxima. We pretty much put our eggs into one basket. The side story to that was, back when I was running around, not sure what I was doing with Hyundai for the second year, we actually were chatting to Nick Senior at the time about maybe being the second car to Possum. Possum had landed at Coffs Harbour in 98 on his own, and we struck up a potential deal to run a second car with Possum for 1998. And would you believe, on the same day that offer came in, which was to put a bit of money together, get a crew together, Hyundai had confirmed a budget for us to compete in the ARC for that season. And the gap was, I guess, too big, we thought at the time, and we knocked back the Subaru deal, went with Hyundai. And, of course, this young Cody Crocker rocks out of nowhere going, wow, I got a phone call from Nick Senior saying, hey, do you want to have a drive in my Subaru? And, of course, he absolutely made every post a winner. And moving forward that couple of years to when I'm driving this yellow car, my dad's ready to fall on his ceremonial sword going, wow, we're now spending our own money trying to beat the people that we almost allowed an opportunity to. Once again, I think you make the call at the time. I have no regrets on any of that stuff. And not sure how it came about. We won the Privateer Championship in 2000 in the ARC. And then all of a sudden an opportunity rose where we could run with Les Walkden as a junior Subaru driver in 2001. And I guess that was the setting the tone for me, breaking away from Maximum, the family team, running with Les Walkden, who's obviously his pedigree is unquestionable, and had some amazing drivers with him. We had a pretty solid year again, driving, fifth, I think, in the championship. Possum and Neil fighting their way through. Cody and Ed fighting out for Group N, and we were sort of making up the numbers with the likes of Stewie Reed, having fantastic battles and poking our nose up every now and then. But at the end of that year, I got invited to test with Rally Art, would you believe, along with a lot of other junior drivers at the time, and Scott Petter rings to mind, Spencer Lowndes, Mark Thompson, all these names that came up, and we went to Canberra and tested for Rally Art. I did get offered a gig with Rally Art. I had to move to Sydney. It was a paid drive. Moved to Sydney, be part of Rally Art, I guess. I went back to Subaru to say, look, I think the next step for me is to, be a works driver. I've got an opportunity with Rally Art. I won't bat one against the other, but I'd love the opportunity to stay with Subaru. It was there. And from that, I guess the third car operation started for me to drive in 2002 with the factory team, of course, alongside Possum and Cody, which was in some ways a dream come true, in some ways daunting. And I guess I made that decision at the time to go, well, I'll go with Subaru because I thought there was going to be potentially a longer relationship to be had. And as you can see, right up from, I started with that factory team in 2002.
Absolutely, and that's a very good snapshot, and thank you for taking us through from the start to the beginning. And you've talked then, obviously, the transition into emceeing and being the host of the ARC for quite a long time, but that, I said, for a little period there, a little while ago, opened up a door. You did participate in WRC Rally Radio, I believe.
Yeah, would you believe I've always liked the media. I actually wanted to be a TV camera as a kid, would you believe? So I sort of grew up loving the idea of maybe being a cameraman for Channel 7 or Channel 9 or something. One tip that was given to me by one of Dad's co-drivers, who was a cameraman, believe it or not, at one stage of Channel 9, said, get in front of the camera if you can. That's not by design. It just happens to be the sport that I'm involved in. So to tie some of those things together, I did have a chance with Colin and Bex that, I guess I'd been interviewed by the World Rally Radio team and that sort of stuff, but I got a bit of a chance to go and be involved in their program. I forget the year now, but I actually went to Monte Carlo, of all places, to have a Aussie at the stage end of one of the biggest rallies in the world, in France or Monte Carlo. Was pretty amazing. I still think that even being involved in the Rally Australia and being involved in even things like the Rally Show, these are our heroes, the world's best drivers, and they're on our soil or you're in amongst them. I think that's a really rare thing that other sports don't have, whether it be cricket or soccer or even Formula One. You don't get access to the drivers like we do in rally. So whether you're in my role now interviewing them and being around them at stage ends, or even being a competitor, to see young Australians compete in something like Rally Australia, they're on the same entry list in the same service park, the same Parc Fermé as the World Championship. The World Champions is unbelievable. So one side note on being over there in Monte Carlo and trying to tackle the French, of course, and Sébastien Ogier was one of the lead drivers and was always the first car in, so it was a real battle to get to him. And you start to get to know some of the French, and their English is not great, and my French is no good at all, of course. Is they kept asking me to say, you are from the UK? And I'd go, no, I'm from Australia. And they would say, that is why you are na all the time. So obviously the Australian accent, they used to pick up man, this guy's got a really weird English accent, but that's because I was from Australia, mate. So, and I guess that gave me a taste as well of what it was like to be at stage end. And you would hear, Colin Clark talk, and he loves, he's done it for a decade more, and we've all benefited from listening to their live stage ends. I think I love the same things that he loves, and of course he's very passionate about it as well. And no doubt I would have picked up some stuff of being involved with them at certain stages as well.
You've been part of the sport for so long and continue to do so. I guess if we look at what the WRC is doing now, and there's a transition in the coming years that we're going to go to hybrid technology. I guess 20 years ago, did you ever even think that was going to be remotely possible? And what's your take on the new rules?
Geez, I'm glad that I'm not making some of those decisions, because I think we're at a really interesting stage of automotive and obviously what that will mean for us moving forward. In some ways, in a flippant sense, I'm a competitive person. I'll make a competition out of going and getting the mail with my sister when I was younger if I had to. So I feel like at some point as humans we'll race anything we're given at the end of the day. I mean, obviously, for the older people, I guess combustion engines and stuff is where it's at, and it won't be the same if it's not like that. But I think whatever the manufacturers of the sport come up with, if there's a competition to be had and it, we as humans can thrive off that, I think I will support it anyway. But also I remember Steve Pizzardi saying to me once, and maybe on one of his interviews on a podcast once, that back in the day when a digital watch came out, everyone thought, well, that's the end of analog watches. Why would you have an analog watch when you can get these new digital watches? And you think about, watches now, the sought after ones, and the people who are really passionate about watches, analog and the craftsmanship and the workmanship in watches. My dad's a fan of watches, for instance. It sort of zones into that those people will head towards that side of it. So if you're a real car enthusiast and the laws of the world allow us to run with combustion cars and engines, well, maybe the enthusiasts will end up with them. The hybrids and the battery powered or autonomous cars will be for the people who want to go to A to B. But I hope, and I feel the infrastructures, there's too much infrastructure around the world just to flip it overnight, but that the passionate people will be the ones that want to race and be involved in and around those cars. So it'll depend on laws and environmental stuff, but I've got some hope that, well, particularly in my lifetime, that it's not going to be too big a transition, and we'll race no matter what happens.
I tend to agree. I think it's just going to constantly be an evolution, and we're just going to have to deal with it. And I guess there'll always still at some point a WRX will be the equivalent of a Datsun 1600, and we'll still be able to rally it.
Absolutely, totally agree with you. Totally agree.
And I just want to understand what's Dean Herridge's worst habit.
Oh, she's worst habit. Probably a better question for my wife. I'm too much of a neat freak. I think I get told to get out of the way and stop trying to clean up behind people. So, yeah, would you believe I'm a bit of a OCD, I think they call it. That's probably my worst habit, I guess. Good and bad, depending which side of the fence you're on.
And obviously with the current situation that we're in, do we prefer to watch a bit of Netflix or Stan?
Oh, no, I think I cancelled Stan. So I'm Netflix. And if I throw another one in, I love the test and the documentary on Prime, actually. Some of the sports docos I'm getting into. So my kids think I'm getting old because I'm watching lots of documentaries, but I'm saying, mate, this is the background of live sport. You guys should be getting into it. So there's plenty of live streaming going on. I wonder what it would have been like in quarantine 20 years ago. I think way worse for a lot of us.
Absolutely. And I guess if you are in quarantine and are watching a bit of Netflix or documentary, do you prefer to have a beer or a wine?
Oh, I'm a bit soft on both, to be honest. Probably beer over the two of those, but I'm probably in the middle. I'll probably go for a cider out of both of them, probably. I'm not a huge drinker. There's the odd time, I think it's called binge drinking maybe, and that was part of my growing up. Would you believe one of my things is training? I mean, people train and they're super fit and way fitter than I am maybe when I drove, but I would not drink for a month before a rally. And I was religious on that. Even when I was younger, like 17, 18, 19, whatever you had to be, I'd be out with mates and stuff. If it was 30 days before a rally, I would not drink a drop religiously. And I think that's gone into my home life now. Like I wouldn't necessarily have a wine or a beer with dinner just for the sake of it. I have a social drink, I guess, with some stuff. But it makes me pretty soft. A bit of a two-pot screamer probably as well because of that.
And lastly, you spoke about a bit of fitness. If you do stay in shape, do you prefer to go for a run or a ride?
Definitely a ride. My joints. One, I think it's timing. I feel like there's probably more to be done with a run. And it's a bit more impacting and stuff. But no, a ride, I've always sort of been into my bikes and stuff like that. So no, I'm a ride person over a run.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Dean. Thank you for the time. And I hope that I can hand the mic back to you later on in the year when we get to go rallying again and let you do a better job of this.
Mate, no, you've done great. Look, I haven't bored everyone to tears, and I'm really looking forward. I do hope we get back out in the forest. We've got an amazing, hopefully, season, and whatever you guys can come up with, we're going to all be very grateful for. So hopefully we get back out in the forest real soon. Thanks for having me.